My dear people, how are you all? This is Venkat. Hope you all remember me from the summer school. From the email, you would have already read what is the reason for this particular video being made. I know it's been like a couple of weeks since the summer school is over, and I know it's a bit unconventional, but from the feedback and my own reflection, I think it's quite essential that we have the presentation that should have been. Well, in the next 15 minutes or so, I'm not going to take very long, we are going to be looking at how has the changing academic environment. We're going to be focusing on South India's engineering institutions. So how has the changing academic environment influenced the academics' perception of their profession, and how has it influenced their perception of being an academic? That is what we are going to be looking at. Hello to you all from me, Venkat, from my supervisors, Mike and Maria Di Lourdes. Let's get started. The structure of the presentation, I'm just going to keep it very traditional. And as you could see, I've just made a few changes so that the presentation reflects much more squarely on the methodology and the results. I think this is a much better approach compared to the previous one, which focused more on the literature. Since this is also a video presentation, I'll try to keep it as light-hearted as possible. Before we jump into the research question, perhaps it would be useful for us to know that this particular research is not my PhD. It is more of an overflow from the interview data that I collected for the PhD. The PhD itself looks at the research productivity and the factors influencing research productivity of academics in a rapidly changing academic environment. As you can see, there are 3 research questions. I think we'll focus more on the first one, which explores if the changing academic environment influences the perception of academics on their profession, and if so, how. Yeah, there are the other 2 include how the changing academic environment influences the research productivity of academics, and how research productivity, academic dishonesty, and changing academic environment are all interlinked together. But again, I think it would be much better if we just stick with the first one. What do I mean by a changing academic environment, and why focus on India? If you look at the graphs that I've just placed on the top of my head, you can see in the last 17 years alone, from 2000 to 2017, there's been an increase of around 210% in the number of degree granting universities. There's been an increase of around 260% in the number of academics working in higher education, and a stunning, even more stunning, 311% increase in the number of students enrolled in higher education. Well, 311% does not really do justice to the numbers. When I looked at how many students are enrolled in higher education for this academic year, 17-18, it was half the population of UK. Half the population of UK. Wow, this is quite an interesting case study. Of course, the other changes in the academic environment include increase in accountability, increase in auditing, increase in workload of the academics, decreased governmental funding, decreased research funding, and all the other aspects that our colleagues here have spoken about. So I'm going to be using all these as factors comprising of the changing academic environment. Why choose Coimbatore? If you look at the graph over here, it just shows that the approximate increase in the number of engineering institutions in Coimbatore mirrors that of the other graphs. That is the main reason. And also Coimbatore is a really beautiful place. Well, I do not want to offend anyone by saying that Coimbatore is the most beautiful place. Perhaps I just say that it's as beautiful as St. Petersburg. Owing to the complex nature of this particular research, a mixed method seemed appropriate. Quantitative data was collected from around 620 academics and managers working in around 60 engineering institutions in Coimbatore. Tests of association and differences were conducted. Factor analysis was conducted to identify the latent factors. Tobit and WLS regressions were conducted as well. But this presentation will focus more squarely on the interviews that were conducted with both the academics and the managers to know how their perception of their profession has been influenced by the changing academic environment. I asked the academics what a changing academic environment meant to them, or what they see as the changing academic environment. Few of the major points that the academics came with and that were often repeated include that there has been an unplanned and poorly planned increase in the number of institutions and the number of seats that are available. Seats in the sense students intakes that are available in the institutions. So it was not focused properly, and because of that, approximately 40% of engineering seats are unfilled. Having 40% seats unfilled is going to create a huge lot of problems, and that is some of the influences of it is what we'll be looking at in the other results. The changing academic environment also meant the huge diminish of funding for higher education from the government, and the government expected the private players to take over higher education, and they have taken over perhaps much more than what they should have. And most of these private institutions are just seen to be profit oriented money making machines. That is the term that they stated. So higher education, according to them, has just become something from a public good to a profit making machine. They also stated that there is a huge erosion of professionalism at different levels, at the academic level, at the management level, and at the governing body level. Some of them we'll be looking in the following slides. The institutional ranking system and the academic performance indicators that is used for the recruiting and the promotion of academics. So these are all the things that the academics stated to be the changing academic environment. Before looking at how the changing academic environment has influenced the academic profession, it would be more useful for us to look at how it has influenced the institutions where the academics are working. The respondents stated that the newly founded institutions, that is, the institutions founded after 1990, are currently in a survival mode, which are struggling to survive day by day, and they have an uncertain future. The respondents stated that in some of the institutions, out of 60 seats that are available, there are only 5 students that are there. Well, this particular course or this particular group of students, in the long run, it becomes completely unsustainable for this particular institution. This has added to their pressures for survival. To cope with this particular unfilled seat and the reduced flow of money into the institutions cut corners big time, which has seriously dented the quantity and the quality of research that they are conducting. Most of these institutions are privately owned institutions, and some of the corners that they cut are quite surprising. Even though the government stipulates that the private institution should recruit at least a master's graduate to teach an undergraduate group of students, these institutions, they just recruit freshly graduated undergraduates so that they can pay them less money. These freshly graduated academics, along with teaching, are also expected to do research, which is very difficult for them. The other corner that they cut is that they do not pay their staff members properly. So they pay 2 months in arrears. For instance, a particular academic working in these institutions gets paid his January salary in March or in April, and then it's paid in installments. Along with all the other things that these academics are expected to do, they are also given a huge amount of administrative task. Because again, if the institution does not have money, they do not want to recruit more administrative staff members. So they just load it all on these academics. Now, looking at how the changing academic environment has influenced the academic profession, well, thinking of it, the changing academic environment having influenced the institutions is also a part of the changing academic environment for the academics. So I wanted to look at how all these together influence the academics' perception of their profession. I was very surprised and a bit taken aback by some of the comments that came through in the interview. The academics commented that academia, being an academic, used to be a very respected career, but no more. The respondents stated that in these newly founded institutions, academics join as a time filler before they join a proper profession. I asked the academics, why do you think that being an academic is not a proper profession? Their response was that, well, how can you think it as a proper profession if you're expected to do much more than what is written in the contract, if there is any contract, something that does not pay you properly according to the stipulations and something that pays you after a few months. Digging deeper with the interviews, the academics commented that they are expected in the newly founded institutions to individually go, canvass and recruit students for the courses in which they are teaching. They also stated that until a few years ago, if an academic recruits 1 or 2 students, then they are given a bonus. But currently, the situation in these institutions are a bit dire, that the academics are being paid for their summer holiday only if they recruit a certain number of students. Another point that they commented was that because of the unfilled seat in these institutions, the institutions are forced to take anyone who applies. So instead of having a really high eligibility or an entry criteria for engineering, as long as a student passes his or her A-levels, they are guaranteed an engineering seat. Because of the absence or very low eligibility criteria, not so academically inclined students, a lot of them get into these newly founded institutions. The academics also commented that for the institution to get a higher rank in the national ranking system, the amount of students who pass a year or pass the course is one of the major criteria, which means that the academics in these newly founded institutions are being made responsible for these academically not so inclined students to pass the courses, which both the students and the staff members are struggling to do. And on the top of all these things, the academics are also expected to conduct research. Tough. The institutions which are in their survival mode are unable to recruit a lot of administrative staff, which means that the academics are loaded with all these administrative tasks which they have very little clue about. As you might have guessed by now, the academics also commented that working in these institutions is really damaging the profession on the whole. Well, these are some of the major points that the academics stated how the changing academic environment is influencing their profession. When I asked the academics what is their perception of their profession, they questioned me, what profession? The academics commented that they are losing sense of being an academic or being a professional. So I asked the academics, what does it mean by being an academic according to them? And they stated that it is about knowledge creation, it's about service to the society, and it's about creating intellectuals. Well, creating intellectuals, I have no idea where they got such an idea from. Huh? My dear people, in India, historically speaking, for thousands of years, being an academic, being a teacher, being in academia has never been seen as a profession. It has been seen as something much bigger, something much more. The concept of being a guru is seen as the top of all the things that a person can do, and they have been respected hugely. And for the academics currently to have taken a huge climb down from being a guru to being a minion in this institution is something that subconsciously they are unable to cope up with. Also, they summarized that there is a huge pressure for them from various fronts, in terms of having to do the teaching, in terms of having to do the administrative work, being responsible for these academically not so inclined students. This particular term makes me smile every time. To pass and to do research, etc., it's really a huge pressure for these academics. Even more interesting comments from the academics include that they saw a huge discrepancy between their studies and the pay that they received. They were stating that some of their friends who have just finished A levels or GCSE and then went on to becoming a milkman or went on to being a shopkeeper earned more money and they had regular pay compared to these academics who have finished their masters or their PhD. This discrepancy has also added to the disillusionment of academia being a profession in these institutions. All these just show how low the perception of the academics on their profession has become, especially in these institutions. And this is something that needs addressing. This presentation has shown the changing academic environment. It has shown the influence it has had on the institutions, the academics, and also their perception of the profession and how it has all changed. Again, it must be emphasized that changing academic environment does not work on its own. It works with a lot of other factors influencing each other. In the future, perhaps a study focusing more squarely on how the perception of academics have changed over the years, how they can be improved, etc., can be conducted. But in terms of the future for these institutions, well, it's interesting. My dear people, you may have noticed that I've changed my clothes, not because I wanted to, but my friend here spilled coffee on it a minute ago. Thanks, dude. I'm really looking forward to receiving your feedback and comments. Teresa, Christina, and Julia, please do let me know where it can be improved, what can be done differently, etc. And also Mirko might be saying, well, this is worth only one paper. But perhaps it's a really good jump from being -1 to one paper. Take care, all the very best, and as our German friend Katinka would say, may God be with you all. Looking forward to receiving your feedback and comments. Bravo. Bye.